And hello, everybody. Welcome to Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel. I'm your host, Marshall, and I am here with a special guest today. We have Miles from Little Wars TV, and there he is saying hello.
Whoa.
We also have Jan and Achilles here, a couple
Hi.
VIPs of the International Kriegsspiel Society, and we have them here to chat with us about, or actually to well, let's just put it straight. We're the firing squad, and Miles is there. So there you go.
Tell me about this when you invited me.
Yeah.
It's an ambush. It's an ambush. This is Kriegsspiel.
exactly
You
it.
never know what's coming.
That's right. There's always a twist. And so there you have it. Miles, I'd like to welcome you to Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel. I don't know what motivated you to accept my invitation. I just figure you have your standards and you don't raise them for anybody because that's how I operate. But welcome anyway.
No, apparently I have very low standards, Marshall. But thank you very much for the gracious invitation. I'm looking forward to this and hope I don't come across as a dumbass.
Oh, don't worry. I do that all the time. That's actually my shtick. It works great. You know, people set really low expectations and you're constantly surprising them. So, well, about half the time. So, can you give us just a little quick background about Little Wars TV? What the heck is Little Wars TV and who the heck are you? In case our viewers don't know. Most people know. I mean, you're even more well known than I am, which is surprising.
It is. You're a megastar, and I don't know how that worked out.
Well, so many people go into the post office and they see that poster that I have up there.
It's really good marketing.
Yeah, I figure there's no such thing as bad press. FBI most wanted, but whatever, you know. Anyway, go ahead, Miles. Tell us about Little Wars and yourself.
Well, my name's Miles, and I'm a member of a club called Army Group York. It's a wargaming club. It's a miniature wargaming club. I know that you look down upon that. And it's based in York, PA. I live on the Maryland Eastern Shore, so all of us live within an hour and a half of the club. And two of the club members years ago, Greg and Steve, wanted to do something to try to grow the hobby. And the hobby was wargaming in general. Now we have our kind of shabby, dim part of it, but it's a broader thing. And they wanted to showcase how fun the gaming can be. And so they came up with this idea of Little Wars TV. They filmed 10 episodes in 2015 through 2018 and went live in July of 2018. And it's worked out pretty well. We've gotten a pretty good following. We've had a lot of fun. They did make a tragic marketing error, in that when they went live with the club, it was around the time of a gaming convention called Historicon, which happens in central Pennsylvania. And all of us miniature gamers go there. It's a place, it rivals Vegas, in terms of its glamour and glitz. And they decided to advertise the station, and they decided to advertise above the urinals. I saw the advertisement, and they let me into the club. They've never done any urinal advertising since. And so I'm a later member of the club, so I kind of started season 2, and there are about 40 people in the club. 10 of us participate in the channel, and that kind of varies based on people's lifetimes. And then we put out 6 or 7 videos a year. The heart of the club is a gentleman named Greg, who's very young, but does all of the video editing, and probably does 7/10 of all the work that gets done. So
can we get Greg on here? We have the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Miles.
Greg, though, now is just welcomed a new baby to the world, so he's in a sleep-deprived state, and he's got way more important things to do than talk to you guys.
That's true, though. It's a baby. Yep.
But Greg's a remarkable young man. He has a real gift for editing. I've tried to edit. Let's just say the stuff I've edited will never see the light of day. And the world is a better place for it.
Amen.
But we really enjoy the putting out the videos. We really enjoy interacting with people and getting the word out that this is a really fun hobby. And as we learn, we interact with people like yourselves who express the hobby in a slightly different way, and it's just expanding our horizons, and it's a lot of fun. It's a real privilege.
Yeah, we're very excited to preach the gospel to you that wargaming should be done with blocks, not with dolls. But I understand whatever it takes. Some people, they get their start with Risk and Axis and Allies and miniatures. Whatever, it's a gateway to real wargaming. But Miles, I do have a question for you, and it's kind of a thoughtful question, which is surprising to me that I had a thought. But you, in your personal life, you're a venture capitalist, your professional life to be exact. Now, as a venture capitalist, you have to deal with risk. You have to assess risk all the time. How does that inform your play style when you're wargaming? And what's a lesson that we could take from that?
I think there's a couple things. My career, I was part of the team that started Capital One. So we may have sent you some mail in the past. I apologize.
I owe you a lot of money. We're just going to leave it at that.
But I looked that up before I got on the thing. And one of the keys we learned with Capital One and venture capital is it's really important to recognize mistakes quickly, and you have to create a management culture where no one is ever afraid to raise their hand and say, I screwed something up. Because, anytime you have a culture where people are afraid to admit problems, all you're doing is saying, don't come tell me when the problem's small. Come tell me when it's really big and we can't hide it. And what that does kind of at an academic, it reduces the velocity of learning. And so everything I do when I look at companies and assess the management teams, it's all about what is their culture and speed of learning. And the same applies to a game. When you play any war game, you make a bunch of mistakes, whether you assume, I'm going to roll a 6 every time, or I think there's some Prussians over that hill and they're not. You can get paralyzed and say, oh my God, I made a mistake. I can't do it again. Or you can say, okay, what am I going to do differently? What did I learn? What can I teach my teammates so they don't make the same mistake I made? We go make brand new mistakes. I always tell my portfolio companies, I'm going to list all the dumb things I've done in the past so we can go make brand new mistakes together. New mistakes are wonderful. Old mistakes, not so much. And so it's about being really fault tolerant and not beating yourself up or others when a mistake happens. So all that does is retard the ability to learn quickly. I'm sorry, that's a very long-winded answer.
No, and that's actually there's value in all of that response. And that's really important, as well as good professional advice. And I'm a big fan of mistakes. I think if you're not making mistakes, or if you don't make mistakes, either you're lying to me, or you're not participating. You're not involved. Mistakes are a hallmark of involvement and trying and learning. I tend to view mistake making it from kind of a scientific perspective. And when you're wargaming, that is the place to make mistakes and learn, because wargaming is also an educational activity. Because the place you don't want to make the mistakes is when human lives are at risk, or if you're deciding, do we want to go to war, or do we want to follow a different strategy in our negotiation, or whatever that may be.
Do you have an unrealistic expectation of a positive outcome? Because you haven't thought through all of the branches where things can go wrong. And in the venture capital world, 9 out of every 10 investments, they don't work. Now the 10th one, it works pretty well, and it's okay. But there's a lot of failure.
Well, I have a business plan for you after the show that you're going to be thrilled to hear about. But in the meantime,
I look forward to it. In fact,
make sure you cut your feed, Miles.
Right now.
Make sure you cut your feed as soon as you can, Miles.
I want to go to Jan and give him a chance to, ask some questions here. Jan is one of our more professional practitioners. He recently earned a certificate in wargaming from an all-star cast of world wargamers. Sebastian Bay. Unfortunately, Peter Perlo, I think he was supposed to teach a course to you, but it did not happen tragically. We pray for him and his repose. But on the other hand, Jan he's gotten very deep into the original Kriegsspiel rule sets, and he is kind of our primary network guy with all of these professional practitioners out there. So I hope that's an okay introduction for you, Jan. But
Yeah,
I'll
sure
hand it
it
over.
is.
I'll hand it over to you.
Sure it is. So first of all, I think it's fair to say that Little Wars TV has brought the historical miniature wargaming scene, so to say, or the how videos are produced and how gameplay narrative is told to a next level. And I know that we at the IKS, we're also looking at what basically then Greg is doing with all the editing stuff, and how we can improve our videos as well, right? As you know, most of our games run 4 hours if we run them live, and it might be hard for folks to watch those. And I also have the experience from watching tabletop games if they run for 5 hours, and I have to go through all the die rolls with the folks, and it's so tiring.
Well, and we find that, we always give people saying, "Oh, show me the whole game. Show me all," because usually it's 6 to 8 hours when we film a game, and we know we're not going to do that because one, I think we crushed the internet just with disk storage, but it doesn't tell the story. And
Yes.
what people really crave in this hobby, because it's actually a quite isolated hobby. It's hard to find other war gamers. They crave that feeling of community. And so what they really love are the little vignettes of the players talking, "This is what we plan to do." And then the vignette a few turns later, "Holy crap, that didn't work out. This is what we need to do." And a little bit of the eye candy of the miniatures. We put a lot of effort, to make it look good. There's an artistic aspect to that. But it's really the player interaction that people really get the most benefit out of. And then I think is, the most interesting, trying to hoodwink another player into thinking I'm going left when I'm going right. That's a lot of fun. And it's fun either way. It's fun if it works, and it's fun if it doesn't work, because we're all having a great time.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about yesterday or today is that I know you guys have tried to incorporate several different systems of fog of war into your games, right? I remember the Marengo game. I don't know how many times I've watched that video. I remember you guys using a matchstick box system to move your forces and so forth. Now you've played several games of Kriegsspiel with us. Do you think there are aspects we sort of can learn from each other? Something that informs your games, or what we can take away from your approaches?
I think Kriegsspiel is a far superior kind of format to run a campaign on. Well, we just did this big Leipzig campaign, and we used a hex encounter game, and I literally recreated the map in 3D. That looked pretty good. It was a lot of work. We could have done that online and had a much more streamlined experience using Discord as a platform, and still done what we like to do, which is fight some of the big battles on the tabletop and pause it. But I think I'm really excited to learn how you run games in Discord and do that. I don't know how to do it. I'm technically not particularly bright. But I think there's a huge opportunity. For a lot of us, it's probably a bigger opportunity, because you think about what we do with miniatures, the kind of prep to play ratio is really high. It's, I'm painting in miniatures and I'm building terrain. It's, 9 hours of prep for 1 hour of play. Now, there's still a lot of prep for what you do, but it's probably not a 9-to-1 ratio. It might be a 1-to-1. It might be a 2-to-1. But either one is really efficient and may make it a lot more approachable to new players. I think, the reason most people in historical miniature wargaming are old guys like me, we got the time to do it. I didn't do this when I was in my 20s or 30s and starting a family and starting a career. because I didn't have time to do it, and I didn't have the money to buy Napoleonics in 4 different scales and try to justify to my wife why I needed each and every one of them. And I do need them, but I can stop at any time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an addiction.
Yeah, I agree. But there was also for me a huge barrier to get into miniature wargaming was, okay, there are so many systems out there. Which one should I even pick? And then which miniature scale should I pick? And well, if I do that, I don't have any friends around who have armies, so I will have to buy at least 2 armies, and then I have to paint them all up. And
you quickly go over the fact I'm building both armies, whatever I do. It's like at the club, we like to experiment with different things. But if you say, you know what, we have a Battle of Manzikert video coming out for our patrons. Yeah, I did all the armies, and you have to do that again. I think there's a way that you merge that. Well, you know, I like Ancients. Why don't I try it on a Kriegsspiel platform to see if I really like it before I invest the time to build the miniatures? Yeah. Also, I think a lot of the gamers of my generation, we used to have model trains and physical toys, and so I think we're more attuned to that physical aspect versus like my son, who's a video gamer, and try as I might, I have failed miserably in getting him interested in historical gaming, and he's the one who got me into it because he started Warhammer years and years ago, and abandoned it after a couple years. I loved it because I loved the painting and the miniatures, but I didn't want to be a 40-plus-year-old guy hanging around the GW store because that was just kind of creepy, and so I moved to historicals.
Make sure your son joins the IKS.
There you go.
There you go. Achilles.
Yes, sir.
It's your turn. I want to hear what you have to ask Miles.
Oh God, it is a firing squad.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, first of all, I'll go back a little bit. I thought it was interesting when he was talking about risk assessment and learning to recognize the mistake. And you're going to make mistakes. We used to say all the time, if you're not making mistakes, you're not doing anything. In my career, we used to make our mistakes at places like NTC, and you needed to make the mistakes there because you didn't want to make them in when you got to the real place, because then people got hurt, so that was always part of our learning process. And of course the guys that opt for it at NTC were really good at finding your weaknesses and your mistakes. That's what they do. So and I find Kriegsspiel is, again, it's that same thing, and you can apply those lessons to anything you do in life. So that I find quite fascinating. And for miniatures, I never played miniatures in my entire life. In fact, I didn't play war games since like high school or something until until recently. Again, picking up all of this stuff, so I'm kind of learning it. And I found Little Wars TV by accident around the same time as I found IKS by accident, and then I started playing on Jim Ozarski's channel, so I get to play digital miniatures, which is fun on TTS, and so that's interesting. My biggest question to Miles though is, what compelled you to march Napoleon's army across the mountains into Bohemia in 1813 to go after Prague? I was watching that episode, and I'm thinking, really, this is what you're going to do? Well, it was certainly out of the box. I will give you that.
Well, and again, this is because of the game we use, the construct of the game, Campaign of Nations. The way that map's set up is Napoleon's in a really bad position in 1813. He's outnumbered 5-3, and he doesn't have a lot of room to maneuver, and his troop quality is maybe the same as the Allies. It certainly isn't better. And I knew I had to land a knockout blow, and the mountains were my friend, because I could get across them fast. But I set that up as a long con, I had planned to do that. And in the spring campaign and the negotiations, I did everything I could to give the impression that I wasn't going to do that. Begging the Austrians to go armistice, trying to set up, looking at the map. Like when we set the game up, I spent the entire day staring at the northern part of the map when anybody's in the room. I did everything I could to sell the fact I was not going south, and it worked. And then, I kind of trapped the Allies. They did something that surprised me. They stood and fight. I expected to chase them, and we got very lucky. The dice were kind to me that day.
There we go.
Yes, they were. I really enjoyed that episode. I watched it. I've watched a few of your episodes, a few of the videos, and always enjoyed them. Looked like you guys were having a great time doing it, and the production value is fantastic, and it's fun to watch, and I love the fact that you guys sometimes travel to the locations, like when you did Vicksburg and was it Hastings? Yeah,
the UK trip was fun. I took Ed over to the UK also. I go to the UK about once a month for business. It's just a wonderful group of guys. We're all, we have a similar, we were very different. We all have very different backgrounds. We don't all have the same political outlook, and that's great. And it's one of the few kind of avenues where I'm not squabbling with people over politics. We have the same thing, and we can agree to disagree on some things, but we like this crazy kind of shabby little hobby, and we have a great amount of fun doing it. So we're very fortunate. It's hard to find a club. We have a wonderful facility in New York. We have our own building. Again, that's pretty rare. I'm very grateful they lowered their standards, and even more grateful they raised them so they don't get any more jerks like me.
There you go. Miles, I want to ask about making mistakes. I want to come back to that because that's a really interesting topic. And how do you recognize if you're making a mistake? And I'll let you think on that one momentarily while I explain to you how I recognize when I'm making a mistake. Achilles and I sorted this out. We realized that I'm wrong more often than not. So what he will do is he'll ask me to assess the situation, what I think we should do. And then I just do the opposite. And I went from being, 40-60 to 60-40 that way. It works remarkably well. So, but how do you recognize if you're making a mistake or if your enemy is making a mistake?
I think you have to be really clear what assumptions led you to the conclusion you're making. Because my ultimate game is win the game. I'm not going to know if I'm going to win the game until it's over. But if I have an assumption, I think the Austrians are going to go here, therefore I'm going to go there. And what are some of the early signs I'm going to see that's going to let me know they're there or not? And kind of laying out those assumptions. As I tell people, if I debate your idea and I start out with your idea is wrong, that becomes personal really quickly. That becomes no, you're wrong. But if I lay out, walk me through your assumptions, and in a business sense, what's your cost to an acquire account? What's your cost to service? How much revenue? If I can break it into small little chunks, we can debate those. But more importantly, we can set up tests to go figure out what the right answer is. And therefore, I'm not debating your personal idea. I'm debating, cost to acquire. Same thing in a war game. Well, like yesterday's game, we were completely lost where the Austrians were. And because we had our own map and we moved the units on our map, we gave the moving of those units too much credibility. And it, because we could see it, they must be there, but they're not. And we started looking, okay, how am I going to figure out where the Austrians really are? Well, where's my cavalry? How long did it take for the cavalry message to get back to me? And then we started figuring out, okay, that works out to a couple inches on the map. And we started kind of breaking down and eventually figured out where the Austrians were. But 2/3 of the game, we were completely wrong. And it was wonderful. It was a blast. But you got to really understand your assumptions, because your assumptions give you kind of key indicators that, oh, I've got a glimpse that maybe it is this or not, and then you adjust that assumption, and you might come out with a different conclusion.
Yeah, I'm sharing the map of the game. I don't know if you guys can see it,
Yes.
but our YouTubers, people viewing online, can see it. And that was a really neat game. It was very compelling. Jan was the designer. And while I walked away from the game with a pretty decent feeling of my performance, this morning I think I was thinking on it, and I realized kind of what the solution to the game was. And I don't think my strategy was as optimal as we assumed it was. It was really compelling, though. And I also like the fact that at the end of the game, it wasn't entirely clear who won or lost. Because when you play a battle, or like when there's a battle in real life, it's sometimes unclear who wins or who loses, you know? And that's one of the cool things I learned about wargaming, is there is this thing where there's not always a winner, you know, or sometimes winning feels just not much different than losing.
Well, sometimes you can become too competitive, and you try to force a positive and a negative outcome, and that may not be fun for everybody. And so I really like the fact we didn't declare a winner, because I got no clue who won that game. But if you go back to that graphic he had on it,
I can. Yeah, I'm going to go right. I'll go right back here.
But when we started the game, when we read the rules, they said the Austrians are pouring out of the mountains. We assumed the Austrians were starting at the very top of the map.
Yeah, up here.
And we knew where we were, where the blue lines are. And so we thought we had moved the left brigade up into that mountain gap where the question mark was. And we thought for half the game, that's where they were. When they didn't move at all, because the Austrians started a whole heck of a lot closer. And our first hint for that was, our dragoons ran into them right at the start. But, we had a bunch of assumptions, and every one of them was wrong. And it just took us a while to figure it out. But it was just a heck of a lot of fun as we started figuring out and going, oh, this means that. And oh, this means that. And holy crap, we're in trouble.
Yeah, well, we had the same experience on the red side. Is we had assumptions that we were actually going to start further south than what we did, and that you were also further south. We didn't expect to run into as quickly and as far north as we did, and so I think for both of us, and I blame Jan for doing this, and we'll go to him to explain in just a moment. But
explain yourself, Jan.
Yeah. But I was of the impression that the plan was thrown in the wastebasket at what point we made contact with the enemy. And I don't know who would have given Jan such an infernal idea for a scenario. The plan, not surviving first contact with the enemy. Come on, what next? Is war just going to be politics by other means? I don't know. But Jan, this is where you explain yourself to myself and Miles, because man, we were pulling our hair out.
Right. So, the way I approached this scenario is I looked at the historical situation, and obviously it's informed by the Battle of Rivoli, which had many more forces involved historically, of course, but we did struggle with the 2-minute turn intervals already with the 4 brigades on the table. So, and then I thought, well, what could be, given the terrain and the basic situation that, well, okay, the French are approaching from the south to counter the movement of the Habsburgs, which are coming down the mountains there along the Lake Garda. What could we do there? Where should we put the players' starting positions and still give them enough agency to come up with a plan of their own, right? Develop an idea for an approach, how to get to the objective or achieve the objective, without just plugging them into a position where they can't do anything really, and they are all set up to just fight each other, and that's it. And then what happened there was not so much by design actually, but by player assumptions. that the initial plans and the assessments of both teams fall apart with the very first contact. And that is, in my opinion, the most interesting aspect of Kriegsspiel is this kind of situation. You might have a great idea, a great plan, the best strategy in the world, but once you start the game, it's basically worthless, right? You know, we say planning is how does this the saying go?
Failing to
Invaluable.
plan is
I think planning is invaluable, but
okay.
plans are worthless, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it was interesting. I didn't really have the chance to hop back and forth to the teams during the game, of course, but watching the video recording afterwards and the sort of the struggles both teams went through, especially the red team actually, was quite interesting. And that is for me, that's the core of Kriegsspiel. Okay, well, now we had an idea and it failed miserably. What are we going to do now? How are we going to react? How are we trying to actually make the best out of the situation we find ourselves in? And I know that is, of course, hard in Kriegsspiel because you don't really know what's going on. You can't see all your force and you can't see the enemy. You're relying on reports and so forth. But that's the fun of it all, isn't it?
Yeah. Miles, when you actually here, this is Damon said this: obsessing over winning or losing a war game can lead to gamey command behaviors as well, such as order your men to fight until they're hamburger to capture the magical victory location, etc. And on my stream, and I don't know if this is very apparent on Dave's stream, I do know that at one point I discussed it when he was in the channel. I know that on my stream on YouTube, we had this discussion of when do we fall back and to where do we fall back? Because I actually explained on there that I'm not going to do this game where I go all in, push all my chips to the center of the table and go all in after the objective. I want to preserve my force. And we did. We had this discussion and my teammates were like this close to saying, let's call retreat. They were actually telling me to do it. I'm like, no, I think we're doing better than it feels. I want to stay stuck in. That's one of the cool things I like about Kriegsspiel is because it's umpired, gamey behavior can be punished and it's discouraged. And you really have to think like an actual battlefield commander and say, look, if I can't achieve all my objectives, something we'll do on purpose to people too, to kind of test them or give them a dilemma. I'm going to fall back. Now, I know it's the same thing in business, right? You know, you have a BATNA, right? Best alternative to a negotiated. Really? I can't believe I forgot how to say the acronym, but you know what I'm talking about. Best alternative to a negotiated agreement or something. How do you guys deal with gamey behavior? Do you use gamey behavior when you're playing miniatures or your games?
Of course,
what do you do about that?
And it depends on the type of game. So if it's a standard battle game, it's a single event, and I got guys lined up on one side of the table, and the other one's got guys on the other side, and we're going to fight to some break point. We're going to use every gamey thing we can. And I can do math in my head pretty well. It's an occupational hazard, and we'll do that. And that's the intent of the game. It's to get that outcome. If it's a campaign where we're playing over a series of days and I've got a long-term result, suddenly I'm going to make trade-offs. I'm going to make capital allocation trade-offs. Is it worth investing? Am I getting a return? Or should I take my capital, which would be men and miniatures and resources, and apply them somewhere else to get a better return? Yeah, you think about relative outcomes, not absolute ones. And a lot of traditional war games, it's an absolute outcome. It's 1 or 0. You won or you lost. Here in a campaign, it's I may have lost, but he lost more, and I'm set up to have a better chance for an outcome down the road. And that kind of calculus is fuzzy math because it's really hard to be precise. And it's a lot more interesting because you factor in human nature and human character, and that just is always interesting. By the way, my dog is going to pop up in the video a few times. That's Gus.
Now you're touching Marshall's heart.
Yeah. Now you're warming up to me now because I'm a big dog lover.
Yeah, Gus is my 34th wedding anniversary present. That was a treat.
Oh, nice.
Well, congratulations for the anniversary and for Gus.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Achilles, gamey behavior, man. What's your opinion of it?
Well, one of the things I like about Kriegsspiel, and he was talking about in war games, is you have an absolute result, is 1 or 0, right? And you tend to have that, especially in my preferred method, which is hex and counter kind of things like that. You're definitely going to have that. Campaigns, as you say, create a different dynamic because you have to worry about day 2. You don't have to. You can't go all in on day 1 because you still got day 2 and day 3 to worry about. One of the things about Kriegsspiel, though, that's different is we can even do that just single day, that battle, and at the same time punish gamey behavior in the sense that it's never really 1 to 0. It's never really an absolute result, because for one thing, we don't often play to conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
We don't play till the last guy's dead, so it gets called long before then. And there's a sense of, when the umpires are going to debrief you afterwards and they're talking about the judgment on the game, one of the things they're going to judge is, did you preserve your force? Did you commit to something you couldn't win and keep trying to do it, like hammering your head against a brick wall? That's, even if you achieved the objective, you still lost.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, the umpires are going to say, yeah, you managed to achieve the geographic objective, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. You had nothing left at the end of it, so you would have been dead on day 2. and so Kriegsspiel allows for that, which as I say, a hex and counter game generally doesn't, or even a miniatures game, if you're playing a single battle, it doesn't.
It's hard with a battle unless you say, look, your losses can't exceed a cap number. I think the real interesting about Kriegsspiel is I like the fact that I can't intuit the combat mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
I can kind of think in general terms, well, if I flank this person, I should do better, but I don't know the math. In a miniature game, I know that math.
Right.
And I can predict that math pretty accurately. I can do the matrix in my head of what's going on. In a hex and counter game with a CRT table,
With the CRT, yeah,
you can understand the math.
If I get that one more strength point, so that I get 3 to 1,
and then I've got a 66% chance of victory.
That's right.
And people like me who do math, I take advantage of that.
Sure.
In Kriegsspiel, I don't have that capability, and that makes it a lot more fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it also makes fun for people who are smarter than me in other ways. They may not be able to do math tricks, and it levels that playing field, which I think is great.
Yeah, and in Kriegsspiel, even if the math should have worked for you, the umpire can make it not work for you.
Yeah,
the umpire is never wrong in that sense, and you can always kind of free Kriegsspiel something. You can always say, okay, he may have rolled the number that would have won, but in fact, because of these factors, he really shouldn't have, and we're not going to let him win it.
Yeah. There is a bit of capriciousness in a good way with being an umpire. That's why I try to be really polite to the umpires. Hoping the umpires is a really stupid thing to do.
Yeah. Miles,
well, this is why Marshall and I try to avoid games with Jan as the umpire, because we murdered him in a tent once. So
in a game, yeah,
right.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, I was going to let's put the qualifier on that. Well, Jan, I would never do that to you, and I'm horrified at their behavior.
No, don't
Oh,
you worry.
that was a good time. That was a good
Yeah.
game. That was from our red and blue campaign. Miles, how do you design a campaign when you're doing it with miniatures in for Little Wars? What are some rules of design that you kind of follow, or what's your process there?
Well, we don't really have a process, which means our
Mhm.
campaigns are all over the place. And like most miniature gamers, we dream of campaigns. We have a number of campaigns. We don't have a lot that have been fought to a conclusions. We still have, from a Coral Sea campaign, a Japanese airstrike that is in the air about to hit the U.S. carriers. And I think that airstrike has been in the air for 4 or 5 years. But any moment now, they're going to land.
Any moment now.
So I think it is, finding something that is manageable that you can, because in a campaign you can have an infinite number of variables and get locked up. That's why we like to use the Hex Encounter game of Campaign of Nations, because it kind of pre-structures the campaign, and that game is designed to be played in 2 hours. Now, taking some of the battles, resolving the tabletop adds a lot more time, but the core mechanism was playable, and then we made a few minor changes to it. So we kind of start with, can I get this done in a reasonable amount of time? And can we resist the temptation to make too many variables? I did a campaign for the club a couple of years ago. It was Napoleon's Invasion of America. It was a really silly campaign, and I made it way too complex. We got to a conclusion, but it was like a baton death march of a campaign. And I learned a bunch of ways how not to run a campaign. I'm working on a Russo-Japanese war campaign. That'll be the next one. That hopefully will run a lot better. And I'm probably going to use a Hex Encounter game as the basis to run that with.
Aside from checkers, have you ever played a game exclusively by the rules, or are you always modifying rules?
We're always modifying the rules.
Yeah, true gamer right there.
I think all gamers are secret rules writers.
Mhm.
Very few of us have the stamina to actually publish. And I think all of us have a rule set that's 60% written, that in our head works great. And then when we play it with other people, it doesn't convey. Like I'm writing a Russo-Japanese war rule set. I had the first game the other night where it went actually surprisingly well, completely different from how I expected it to, but people had fun. So, we're making progress with that. I think at the club, we tend to write our own rules because we have a certain play style. Now we do like some rules writers, like Dave Brown, writes wonderful rules. He's got a great Napoleonic rule set, General Dorame. Second version is coming out soon. It's a free advertisement for Dave Brown. It's probably the best tabletop Napoleonic game I know. He's got some other rules. So there's some rule writers we really like, and we'll play their rules as written. We try not to tinker with them too much.
We have, and it's interesting because we have something coming up next weekend down in Los Angeles at a convention, and the topic that we're one of the things we're going to do is we're going to give a talk, and the topic of that talk is going to be about Kriegspieling old war games, like the old Hex Encounter games and everything, bring them into Kriegsspiel style games, and we're going to be running a game also, on a live game, in-person game on Sunday. And one of the things that I'm working on is usually the day before we run our live game for people, we always play a few games ourselves, like on the Saturday before. And so I'm working on a scenario for Marshall and James and Damon and Paul to play, that is based on Mark Herman's Pacific War. You mentioned Coral Sea. It's actually involving the Coral Sea scenario, but it's taking that game system and modifying it to be more chaos-like, and yet using the core of that system, and of
Right.
course adjusting it and writing my own rules. You said, as you said, I agree. I've never played a game with rules as written ever. The ones that I have bought as I got back into this, as soon as I get it and I read the rules, I always think of something that somebody told me in a art history. One of my professors told me in art history once was, for the great artists, the first they have to learn all the rules before they can break them.
Yeah.
And so I do that. I'll mess around with it and read the rules and kind of do a scenario to see how the rules actually work, and then I immediately throw them all out and start writing my own.
Well, and there's a great question that just popped on the screen from Mede. It says, how do creators keep personal bias out of skewing the correlation of force? I don't think you can. Like my French guard will always be really, really good. And the only way to do it is to have the rules reviewed by someone who really likes British line units. And you have that friction that you end up kind of with a negotiated result. But all humans have a bias, and it's going to get expressed in anything creative you do. And you have to be willing to accept others' opinions, because we're never going to make anything that's actually accurate. We're going to make something that is playable. And playable is more important than a perception of accuracy.
I always used to say the only way you can turn it into a true simulation of war is to have somebody shooting at you while you're making your decisions.
or
Well,
and the unit gets killed. The miniature gets tossed into a shredder. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. And even then, it's not going to be realistic anyway.
No.
Like all models are wrong. Some might be useful. And one of the great things we have, I think, at the IKS is that with so many folks tinkering around with their own rule systems for various different periods and campaigns and what have you. And those rules, usually they are under constant development, right? So you run a game, then you get feedback, you change the rules and so forth. You get more research in, you put that into account and so forth. So
there's something artistic with what we do. And there's lots of different avenues, whether it's physical art from the painting, whether it's art of the mind from the rules writing and the conduct. And the process of creating that art is the fun part. I don't ever want to sit here and say, I've written the perfect war game rules. I'm done. I don't need to do anything else. That would be awful. That would be like retiring. And I'm not allowed to retire. Apparently, my wife tells me I'm very annoying when I'm bored. And so I'm not allowed to use the R word. But I wouldn't want to. I want to constantly be finding a way to make it better. Again, there's another flash about wanting more historic accuracy. We can always strive for it, but it's a goal we never achieve. And I think humans by nature, we're meant to be struggles. We're meant to struggle. We shouldn't have it easy. And the value is going through that struggle process to create whatever you're trying to create. I realize I'm sounding like a pompous ass, and I should shut the hell up.
Oh no, you're at least 2 levels below me. You're good.
Well, yeah, we all aspire, Marshall, to be you. And again, we can't.
Exactly. That's like trying to create the perfect game right there. Trying to be like Marshall.
Miles, you've now played Kriegsspiel as well as miniatures. So I want to ask you, this is a serious question.
Oh, here it comes.
Yeah, believe it or not, serious question. What do you think are the advantages to playing with miniatures?
I think the advantage of playing with miniatures is actually quite limited. And the advantage is the 3-dimensional feel you have on a tabletop. And there's a bit of pride. There's a bit of, I'm a 6-year-old at show and tell, and I'm showing off here's my soldiers. And there's a bit of pride of creation. Very few things will look better than the Austerlitz game we ran on our video with close to 4,000 15 millimeter miniatures and an 8x12 map scale map of the battlefield that was done really well done. There's just kind of a visual appeal, but my God, is there a lot of work to get there? And you better like painting and sitting in your dank, dark basement, hunched over. You better like it, or it's not a really good return on your times. I think in terms of playability, the way we play things on Discord and all that has opened my eyes to a whole range of outcomes I just didn't even think about. And so from playability, the way we do Kriegsspiel is far superior.
So do you repent? Do you repent?
When I choose not to have the aspirations of an artist, I may want to do Kriegsspiel. When I want to evolve to that higher plane and think 3-dimensionally as opposed to 2-dimensionally, I'm still going to stick with miniatures.
Yeah.
But I am, you'll be happy, I have a whole set I'm going to be laser cutting a whole set of Kriegsspiel little counters for us to use in an upcoming project. My wife got me a laser cutter for Christmas.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, I got a dog and a laser cutter. I'm a very lucky man.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
awesome.
there you go. Yeah, I'm liking this, and I'm hoping that, we're getting to the end of the show, so I'm trying to wind down a little. And I'm going to give Jan and Achilles a chance to speak as well here. You're welcome, guys. What I would like us to collaborate with you on a project at some point in the near future. I know that Little Wars is kind of, I don't know if you're pausing or slowing down a little. Because or why do I think that? Is that the case?
Well, because Greg announced with his new baby, he's got way more important stuff to focus on than editing videos, and the rest of us are way too lazy to learn how to edit videos. And so I think we're on a bit of a pause, but I would love to find a way to work on a number of projects. The other thing we've learned in our channel is you never pick a project. You pick a number of them because not all of them get to the finish line.
Otto wants to host a game for you here. Now, Otto is our premier World War II umpire, especially on the Eastern Front. His games are chef's kiss. They are literally the epitome of perfection. If you think Jan's game yesterday went well, it was a 7.2 megaquake compared to what Otto does. So, yeah, Otto's games are absolutely exexquisite. They
would be
Otto
briefings
doesn't-
in 70 pages.
Yeah.
doesn't
Oh yeah. Just get through his
and,
briefing.
That's a lot of reading. Are there words with more than 2 syllables?
Oh God, yes.
I'm
And
out.
some of them are.
I'm out.
Some of them will be
Into it.
written in Cyrillic, so
Yes.
you need to be prepared.
But
That's like reading a glance book. They're really great resources, but man, they're hard to get through.
yeah, no, Otto's great. Otto is amazing, and we will next time he has a game. I'm gonna arrange to make sure that you're in that.
I'll take any command no one else wants. Just give me the Dismos command, and I'll have a blast.
That's how I play. I love that. I love doing that. Give me the Johnny detail. I will play my heart out. I like doing that. Why do you like doing that?
Well, a couple of things. One, a lot of times I have to play like I played Napoleon, and there's a lot of pressure, and I like just being like this in James's 1796 kind of Napoleonic campaign. I got a division, and I'm just having a blast with that little division. I might have just gotten my ass kicked a few days ago, but I'm still having a great time.
There you go. Okay, I'm going to let the other two hosts here fire away. Jan, what do you got for Miles before we wrap up here?
Well, first of all, as Marshall said, we'd be very happy to run something together and think about ways to maybe combine our two passions, so to say, and create something out of that. And I find the discussion we had today very interesting, and also the perspective we have on the different sides of the hobby, which share aspects but also are different in various aspects. And I think those kind of discussions we should have much more often, which is also why yesterday I tried to invite several folks from different wargaming backgrounds and connect them, because that is So there's so much value in exchanging these perspectives and grow together. So yeah, we are really looking forward to increasing cooperation, so to say.
It would be a lot of fun. So you tell me what to do, and I just want to surprise you with how fast I can do it.
Outstanding. Mr.
Awesome.
Achilles, what do you
Sir.
got?
I was just thinking, Jan, by the way, is like our cardinal of ecumenicalism. He's the one that's sort of spreading the faith, kind of bring all of the faiths together into a single unity, which is fantastic, because I've never had that boundary in my head between the different types of games. I'll play anything, so it doesn't really matter to me. Yeah, and I actually I don't have too much to add on this. One thing I will say, Miles, wanting to command just give me a simple command, something like that. For 2 years in IKS, all I wanted to do was command cavalry, and no one would ever let me. I mean,
Those bastards.
I know. It's like, okay, wait, no, this is what I know. This is what I know how to do, and no one will ever let me do it. I always end up as the senior commander, like Napoleon at Grand Waterloo or something. By the way, Miles, how did we manage to lose that game? I want to know what happened to you up there, but never mind.
All I know is I walked up, I grabbed a battery, I didn't have a division, and I was my level of confusion was like at a 9. I think that's probably appropriate, but but I think, Marshall, one of the reasons I like a small campaign is that I don't want to let my players down, my co-players, because I'm ignorant. And so I like to kind of learn and make sure. I like to make small mistakes before I decide to throw whole divisions away at Waterloo.
There you go. Well, Miles,
don't worry, Miles. You may have lost a division, but I lost an entire army that day. So,
but you earned
that day. But still, we had a lot of fun.
You earned an award, Achilles.
Yes, I did. I got a special mug for that. I'm now part of the Defeated Napoleons Club.
There you go. I have yet to enter that club. It is inevitable it'll happen one day.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, anybody who loses a game as Napoleon, a grand game as Napoleon, we send them that mug for free. So, bit of a consolation prize there. Miles, anything you got for us that you want to share with us or our audience community?
No, I just want to thank you guys for how welcome you've been when you invited me to Grand Waterloo and some of the other games. It's just I have been blown away by the friendliness of the community, and I'm learning how to use the Discord and all these things. I'm not particularly smart at, and you guys have been very patient, and I look forward to doing more, and hopefully find a way that I can learn how to umpire and give a little bit back. But I'm very grateful to be invited to play in the games, and I hope we can find some other ways to contribute from our dismal little toy soldier view.
All right. Well, thank you, Miles, for joining us. It's a privilege and an honor. Thank you for participating yesterday as well in that event. And we will have more invitations out to you as the weeks roll on. And again, we would really love to collaborate with you on developing a campaign and playing it out. And maybe we can get some crossover going where there's miniatures.
Let's figure a way to do that. I'm gonna make a couple suggestions, and you make some, and we'll figure out that, and let's see if we can make that a reality.
That sounds like a plan. You're on. All right. Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in and watching. I want to thank everybody in our comments. Remember, you can support us on Patreon. It's patreon.com/Kriegsspiel. And those donations are benefiting the International Kriegsspiel Society. And that's all I've got for now. So we will see you all on our next adventure. Goodbye for now.
See you later.
Bye-bye.